Got something different today on the Husker247 podcast. We are welcoming in NFL draft analyst for Fantasy Life, Thor Nystrom, a podcast guest that I am familiar with because of largely Minnesota Vikings things, but also a NFL draft fiend. This guy loves the draft. He loves talking about the draft. He loves looking at film, watching players. And so I wanted to bring in somebody to talk about Nebraska's draft prospects and have someone that has a different view, I guess, if you would, than what we have here in the Nebraska Fishbowl. So Thor, Iowa hat and all, welcome into the show.
Yeah, you decide to get a divergent viewpoint as far as it goes with this with Iowa. You know, I'm coming into enemy territory here, but I have to say right from the get, there are several Nebraska draft prospects in this cycle that I am intrigued by that have fascinating evaluation. So excited to talk about them with you today.
Yeah, let's start with this. And I don't know how much that you have really looked into it or know his history. But Matt Rhule, since even going back to his days at Temple, has produced and put guys in the NFL. I mean, Hassan Reddick being the biggest name of them that have gone on to be good players. And a lot of guys that he's been able to put in are solid contributors. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you when you hear the name Matt Rhule and you either think NFL draft or just football in general?
I definitely don't think about the NFL at all. You know, I just think about his work at college and he's obviously a builder. That's the thing that people always say about him. But like his philosophy, the way that I think about it, he goes and he gets projectable guys that have the traits, and he's really good at building the skill sets of those guys that he sees as system fits, building the skill set, right? From some of these guys that he brings, like a Baylor, he loved grabbing the guys who fell through the cracks, who were the track stars, right? I mean, they had all kinds of speed on that Baylor team by the very end, but the reason they were falling through the cracks, you know, you'd have prospects and maybe they only started playing high school football as sophomores, or, you know, for whatever reason, you know, they just, their skills weren't refined yet. And so they, you know, that's why they were, you know, mid high 3 stars as opposed to the 4 and 5 stars that Texas and Texas A&M would, you know, were inevitably going to take. And I would say that I would say it's getting guys that have those projectable traits early, identifying them correctly, and then he's really, really good at building up that skill set and then fitting them into his system.
Yeah, and one of the things we know that he's really good with is the defensive line. He inherited Ty Robinson when he got here. Ty Robinson over the last 2 years has been a wrecking ball at Nebraska. Sometimes it has gone a little bit underappreciated. Sometimes it's so in your face that there's no way you can do anything but appreciate it. Nebraska fans will certainly miss having him on the defensive line. But when you've gotten into the film, what stands out about a guy who has just steadily seen his draft stock improve, even before the big combine where he kind of announced himself, I think, at large? This is someone that I think analysts really liked when they put on the film from his senior year or even years before it. And then he had a nice Senior Bowl as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna give Ty Robinson probably the best compliment I can give it, coming from the perspective of a Hawkeye fan. You know, during the fall, college football guy here, right? Like, and then in the spring we do the NFL draft stuff. I hated Ty Robinson. It's the best compliment as a Hawkeye fan, right? Like, that dude is a pest. He gets into the backfield, you know, like you're mentioning, ransacks, and then he's like the T-800 when he's pursuing someone, right? It's like, you know, from Terminator, you know, it's like just a dogged pursuer, the effort that he gives. And of course, he's a good athlete. Is he had the 4.83 and 171 in the 10-yard split at, you know, eyelash over 6'5", and then 288. The last Raz I had on him, 9.89. Pretty good. And that was over the full gamut of tests. Most of these guys skip a couple. And if he had skipped the 3-cone, he would be even higher than, you know, the 98.9th percentile. So, I mean, this is a really good athlete. You know what the nitpick is. I mean, you know what the nitpick on this evaluation is, and the reason that he's going to go lower than he should. It's the arm length thing, right? And there are teams where they have thresholds. They will take you off. They're not even going to consider. One of those guys just got fired. Trent Baalke is one of our the ones that we have the funnest with, the decision maker, where he adheres perhaps a little too dogmatically to the thresholds. It's the reason that he took Travon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson first overall a couple years ago. But there are, certain decision makers in certain organizations where they hold those measurables like that in very high regard, where they use that to filter out people. But I think filtering out Ty Robinson would be a mistake. Again, I think that's a guy who is going to be had for a discount on draft day. And it's like, I think about it like this, sometimes, I think people make mistakes when they're only looking at, sort of the, you're sort of discounting or you're sort of focusing too much on the bad parts of the evaluation or like these sorts of things. I can't envision a scenario where Robinson does not have at least a long NFL career as a valued rotational guy. And when I can set that floor, because it's like, you think about him coming in off of the bench, how active he is, even if he didn't develop into an every down guy, I think that's the floor. But you have at least a moderately high floor there, and then we'll see with the ceiling. Will that length end up, affecting that at all? And by the way, I mean, he still has a longer wingspan in his defense than Mason Graham, than Walter Nolan, than TJ Sanders, like some of these other dudes. So I have him around the 15, 16, 17 range of the IDLs in my draft rankings. And we'll have to see. But I do think he's going to be had for a discount on draft weekend. So
when you say a discount, because keeping an eye on where things are ending up in various mock drafts, which isn't always an indication of how things are going to go. Ty's been a guy that has moved from the third day to he's appearing in a lot of second day stuff. Do you think he's still a tweener where he could still end up on the third day on a Saturday, or do you think it's pretty likely his name is going to be called at some point on Friday of the NFL draft?
Yeah, I mean, it's either going to be he's either going to hear his name called at the very end of the festivities at some point on Friday night, or he ain't going to have to wait long on Saturday. But yeah, that's where I think it is. And like earlier this process, it's like, as you know, on the Viking show, we do the mock drafts every week, and I definitely have gotten Ty Robinson in a couple of those, and like on the PFF thing, I think you can get him in like round 5 or round 6. It's like that's too light. And some of the ways that he was talked about earlier this process, it was like, as that sort of later in day 3 type afterthought. And it's like I watched that guy create all kinds of havoc. And again, it's a good athlete in a rangy frame, and the effort is die on the sword, William Wallace and Braveheart kind of thing. It's like carry him off the field kind of a thing. It's like, yeah, I get the arm length thing. I'm an analytics guy as well, right? And so like over the ocean of data, the reason you have thresholds is it does over the ocean of data, it points you at things, but it's not nullifying with him at all there. And I think the people that are focusing too much on that, you sort of miss all these other super duper positive parts of his evaluation, which again, for me, imbues that floor where longtime rotational guy, if nothing else.
One of the things that I'm curious about, is he a situational fit for teams where if they're more likely to run, 3 down linemen versus 4, is he a better fit in a situation where it's a 3-4 than he is in a more of a traditional 4-3?
Honestly, I to me, yeah, like he is. I would like to have him as the 5 technique dude on a 3-4 line. As a Vikings fan coming to you live from Minneapolis, that's a guy that if the Vikings do not take an interior defensive lineman with with their first pick, because the Vikings do not have the second round pick, and it is in play, a Derek Harmon, potentially a Walter Nolan or a Kenneth Grant. But if I think the favorite outcome for the Vikings at 24, well, it would either be trade down or it would be offensive lineman. The offensive lineman should be the heavy favorite for them with their first pick. But if that's the scenario, after you trade for Jordan Mason, you don't need the running back as much. They have a 3rd round comp pick. I would be sniffing around Ty Robinson quite hard, because Ty Robinson, he can play both those, the DNs in the 3-4 system. Vikings, you sign the 2 down linemen to play next to Harrison Phillips and Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, but the depth there is not great yet. And if you had a guy like Robinson where he can give a breather to those guys and just sort of, go down the line and give all them breathers down in and down out, you're going to end up playing a decent snap share in year 1, even though you're not technically the nominal starter. So yes, but to your point, yes, a 3-4 is where I believe he best projects as an end in a 3-4.
I want to move over to Thomas Fidone here. He strikes me as a guy, and so I spend a lot of my time covering college recruiting, which is a lot of projectable and track times and measurables and all of these things. And one of the big discussions is high school production versus measurables. And then you get into a conversation like a Thomas Fidone, who has also seemed to have kind of shot up the draft boards of his own great combine performance. There's a lot of people around Nebraska that watched him over the last 2 years and feel like, okay, he's a fine tight end, but is he really going to be an NFL guy? And yet this was someone who's the number one tight end in the country when he came out as a recruit. He worked through 2 knee injuries. It's quite possible the best football in his career is ahead of him. Do you feel like the NFL is very similar, where college production is a data point, but it's certainly not going to be the driver in decision-making?
1000%. Yeah. I mean, like, people will ask me like, oh, are you a film guy or are you an analytics guy? Cause like, it's sort of a cliche, like people that have a job like this, you're sort of led by one foot or the other. In my opinion, omitting data points of any kind, it is going to make your evaluations less accurate. So like, it's like, well, obviously I'm both, right? Like you can't kick one out or the other. And, and then information that you get, the outside context, right? Like digging into some of these, you can't omit that either, right? Like the more information you get, the clearer the Polaroid picture, it's like Back to the Future. They got the Polaroid picture. It's like the clearer it will become, the more information that you have. You're never going to bat 100, but you want to juice your odds of the more accurate that you can. And that's how you do it. Fidone for sure is viewed as one of the top projectable tight ends, right? Like in this class, I think for most people, they consider it either a consensus top 6 or top 7. Depending on the way that they view Gunnar Helm and, arguably some people are Harold Fannin haters. I don't really get that. But, whether it's 6 or 7, Fidone to me should be, and he is in my rankings, right outside of that. I have a consensus top 6. I'm not a Gunnar Helm guy, so he's lower for me. But I have Fidone at 7. This is not the first conversation I've had about Thomas Fidone this afternoon. I got a call from someone in my industry that wanted to have a discussion about Thomas Fidone. He had just finished watching him, and he was like, what, what are your thoughts here? Like that, this guy moves around pretty good, this guy I was talking to, he's a big fan of the analytics as well. And he's like, what, but he doesn't follow, he does NFL during the fall. So he was calling me to get some of the context. And so it's like, yeah, man, I mean, he tore the 2 different ACLs, and it was like stop and start at the beginning of his career. And obviously was the top recruit, as you were alluding to. But like it comes down to the last couple of years, right? Like, is that endemic of like what he is, or is there that dormant potential? I clearly fall on the latter half of that. I believe that there is untapped potential here. Tight end, as from the high school to the college and then college to the pros, it is one of the more slow developing positions that
Absolutely.
we have. Yeah, you're like a minotaur, right? You're half offensive lineman, you're half receiver, right? Or some of these guys, they got to be part fullback as well. And Tyler Warren would say he'd be part ball carrier as well. So some of these different guys, but you have to do all these different things, and you have to know all these different responsibilities that goes beyond that. You come out, I don't care if you're a 5-star or if you're a first-round pick, you tear ACLs in consecutive years, and then you're already at the slow developing position, and that's right at the outset of your time at a new level. You have to get the same sort of benefit of the doubt of your development when you are able to get back on the field. So to me, his true junior season, to me, that's a wash. And then last year, and it's also a wash because, sorry, Nebraska fans, but the quarterback he had the year before, the scrambler kid, I hope he's not listening right now, but not much of a thrower. At least last year we had Pat Mahomes, his little brother, running around out there, and that kid's fun. Big fan of Rhule, big time arm, but they could finally throw the ball again. But as I was explaining to this guy, I was like, Rhule went out and got these guys in the transfer portal, these huge boundary receivers, right? That can get downtown, Neyor and Jamal Banks and this sort of thing. It's like, would you be sending Fidone down the seam all the time in that sort of scenario? And his offense it's not super vertical anyway. I can explain why Fidone is where he is in his developmental arc to this point. That has nothing to do with he won't get there. I can't say that he will for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like that part of it is a black box. And I do believe that there is dormant potential lying behind that door, but like can't say for sure. So that's why you sort of split the baby. I put him after those top 6 guys. Feel great about that. Tyler Warren, Loveland, Fergie, Jason Taylor's kid, Fannin, and then Arroyo. But like after those, the sure things, Fidone, he's in to me, he's in a tier by himself at that tight end 7 spot, because he is the one sort of developmental dude, has all the traits. He has the frame, he has the athleticism. I like the way he moves around on the field. I like his length and his frame and his effort blocking. There's not a ton of tight ends in this class where you feel comfortable this guy can mostly play inline. He'll be a base inline guy at the next level. Fidone for sure needs to work on the blocking technique, right? He could stand to add some more weight and some more bulk to improve the play strength on his frame. But speaking to the measurables, even after the 2 knee injuries, you're wondering, like, did this zap any athleticism? I don't know if you've checked out Fidone's RAS page. His number 1 athletic comparable based on his pre-draft testing numbers at the tight end position since the mid 1980s, the number 1 guy, all those tight ends who have come into the and tested, and all the ones that didn't make it, at least that went through the testing process. The number 1 guy that Thomas Fidone is closest to athletically is TJ Hawkinson. That's pretty eye-opening. That TJ Hawkinson is an incredible athlete, obviously in the big package, and Fidone's the physical package and then those measurables eerily reminiscent of TJ Hawkinson. Again, doesn't mean he's going to get there, but he has all the tools he needs to succeed in the NFL.
Hey, last thing for you, because I know we're up against it time-wise. A couple more guys, Isaiah Neyor, Tommi Hill. Do you have any thoughts on them? Tommi Hill especially was somebody who coming into the year was maybe a day 2 guy. Some places even had him at the end of the first round. Seems like the way things played out for him and the fact that he didn't test at either the combine or at pro day could really hurt his stock.
Yeah, there was some struggle, as you know, in coverage this year. I like the aggression in his game. I like that you get the help in the run game with him, because there's some cornerbacks that do not want to tackle. He's obviously a well-built kid at 213. I think you might, and he's got a long wingspan too. I think you have a second developmental bullet there, potentially. Doesn't work at corner. You could kick him to safety, but you mentioned it's kind of scary not knowing those testing numbers. The NFL probably would have a little bit better of an idea of how he has tested in the past, but just the idea that he ducked him is a little bit concerning. And then Neyor is really interesting. It's another guy where it's like sort of the star cross thing, right? With him, he had the knee injury is like earlier on at Wyoming. It's like, man, this kid looks good. Then Sark was like, this is going to be my dude. And then it just got weird. He had the knee injury, and then they didn't use him when he came back that year. And then, the 1 year that he had at Nebraska, but the physical package, that's what you're looking for. The dude's enormous, and north to south is a linear guy. He can get downtown, right? And so it's like, we don't need him to do a lot, right? We don't need him to run whip routes. We don't need him to break ankles in the intermediate, because he ain't going to do it. Can he be a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, right? Or can he be, DJ Shark or one of those? All we need you to do, pal, is show you can win enough down the field as a one-trick pony that we're going to force the defenses to play 2 high safeties. You become a space player for us, right? We need occasionally you'll hit the dingers. You have to show that you can. But if you can, you will get those opportunities beyond the field, because you will help our spacing. You will give us more intermediate spacing. Our slot receiver will love you. Our tight end will love you, because the safeties have to play back on you. That's what you're wondering with him. It's an older player that because of the star-crossed thing with the injuries and the situations he got in, he's a little bit further behind on the development than you would want. But the thing I'll say in his defense is we don't need a fully fleshed out thing here. Can you get downtown? And can more to the point, we know you can get downtown. Can you make the plays down the field against NFL defenders? For me, he is worth a shot in day 3 there as the sort of dart throw, because this is a super crappy receiver class. And you do not have many dudes in this class that can compare with him as far as the size speed package.
All right, Thor. Hey, I appreciate your time here. We're going to do this again. Another point in time, either next year going through that class, or maybe even bring you in during the actual college football season, get your thoughts on how things are going in the Big Ten with Nebraska and with Iowa. Everyone check out Thor Nystrom, his work with Fantasy Life over there as an NFL draft analyst. Thor, thanks for joining us.
My man, appreciate you.